level, toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble, fillet of a fenny snake, in the cauldron boil and bake.
Bichos, saiam dos lixos.
lixos.
Eye of newt and toe of frog,
Baratas,
Baratas,
me deixem ver
deixem
suas
ver suas
patas.
patas.
wool of bat and tongue of dog,
Ratos, entre nos sapatos do cidadão
Cidadão
civilizado.
civilizado.
The best prologues have the fewest things, or say them in an abrupt, obscure manner. Accordingly, I will refrain from relaying the extraordinary process that I employed in composing these memoirs, crafted here in the other world. So I'll tell you at least 3 stories, all true because they don't contradict each other. You have 4 or 5 different polyrhythms running concurrently. All those words that gushed like water from a fountain, the heart's berimbau quivering in irregular time, a rhythm, jarring juxtapositions of nefarious symbols such as snakes, rainbows, hatches, fish, coffins, swords, light bulbs, penguins, Bud Light, Velcro, claymation, the moon made out of cheese, and unidentifiable abstractions, the beautiful and not so beautiful, Macunaíma and poetry, and the ones who have managed to mismemorize a few lines, like this one, this mess on the other side of sound. Though a single story, there would be 1,001. The first, How to Kill Cockroaches, begins like this.
Something's living in my bathroom, I said. I'll call the exterminator, he responded. I was not comfortable with that word. The truth is that I was only complaining about cockroaches in the abstract, since they weren't even mine. They belonged to the ground floor and would crawl up the building's pipes to our home.
I heard on NPR about a guy in Brooklyn who found a rat in his toilet. Apparently it climbed the pipes, and when the man walked in, there it was, squeaking up at him.
I imagined the rat running up the slope of the air conditioner and onto my arms. I've seen YouTube videos of New York City rats scaling the facades of apartment buildings.
Oh, don't worry about the rats. They don't hurt anyone.
The other story is actually the first one, and it's called The Murder. It begins like this.
I undressed and placed my clothes in a pile on the bed before heading into the bathroom, where I felt a strange presence, as if I were being watched by something beneath me. I see a small shadow run across the far end of the hallway, so I run back to the bed. After a few tense minutes, I finally do what I do best. I scurry across the room, yank the blinds down, and hope the problem goes away. The next morning, I raise the blinds of my bedroom window, and a rat is perched outside on the air conditioner, watching me. I thought to call the landlord again, but I was beginning to think that he expected me to take matters into my own hands. I drink an entire bottle of wine alone and decide to take care of the problem myself.
I Google animal control. I Google rat disease.
The rat is waiting inside my house in the kitchen.
I Google New York rat lifespan, 1 year. I Google diseases New York rats carry, all of them.
The rat watches me.
I Google disinfectant. I Google sterilizing cleaners.
He gave me this recipe for killing them. I was to mix equal parts sugar, flour, and plaster. The flour and sugar would attract them. The plaster would dry up their insides.
I stopped reading, startled by something moving on a spoon on the counter, just under where I was holding the phone. I thought it was a cockroach, but realized the dark lump trapped at the center of the spoon bowl had been my reflection. My eyes gleaned a solitary crow. it had separated from its murder.
Adder's fork
Adder's
and
fork,
blind worm's
Worms
sting,
sting,
lizard's
lizard's
leg
leg,
and howlet's
howler's
wing,
wing,
for
for
a charm of
charm of
power
power,
for trouble,
trouble,
like a hell
a hell
broth,
broth,
boil and
boil
bubble.
and bubble.
I was preparing their evening poison, meticulous, ardent. I concocted the elixir for drawn-out death.
I icily wanted just one thing, to kill every cockroach in existence. Cockroaches crawl up the pipes while we, worn out, dream. And now the recipe was ready, so white. Today, I secretly boast in my heart a plaque of virtue. This house has been disinfested.
Bichos escrotos saiam
Saiam
dos
dos
esgotos.
esgotos.
Bichos escrotos venham enfeitar
meu
meu lar,
lar,
meu
meu
jantar,
jantar,
meu
meu
nobre
nobre
paladar.
paladar.
The third story that now begins.
When Gregor Samsa woke up one morning from unsettling dreams, he found himself changed in his bed into a monstrous vermin. He was lying on his back as hard as armor plate, and when he lifted his head a little, he saw his vaulted brown belly, sectioned by arch-shaped ribs.
I woke from unsettling dreams to my mattress jingling with loose change. I lay on my stiff back, armor tight with tension. I raised my head a little and saw my brown belly divided into sections striped by the sun slicing through half-open vertical blinds. The lines extended and covered the room with bars. With a monstrous hangover, I peeled a penny stuck to the skin next to my belly button, then remembered my passport.
Part of my nightmare returned. Sun, salt, me scurrying south in city streets. Identity check, please. Tilted head up for scanning. A dream, I reminded myself.
I put my headphones on and walked towards the subway. It's 8 in the morning and the city's already in full swing. I let my attention rove over the street vendors and the school teacher walking a caterpillar of toddlers on a giant leash. A woman waits for the bus and a man stands too close to her.
The institution then appeared from behind a row of trees. As I passed the driveway, 2 security guards sitting in a white booth were visible in the near distance. My heartbeat quickened. I should not be here. My fingers fidgeted with the sheet of paper in my pocket, which was creased from being folded over and over. I felt ashamed.
O monumento
Não te importa.
A entrada de
Entrada
uma
de uma
rua
rua
antiga,
antiga,
estreita
estreita e
e torta.
torta. Last night, she was bitten by a radioactive cockroach. Underneath her clothes, she is covered in armor. He asks, "You shy or just a bitch?" Her senses are heightened. She hisses at a decibel that shatters the jars of salsa, studding the man's chest with small shards of glass.
The fourth narrative inaugurates a new era. It begins as we know.
There are creatures in the building. They start out as these small, furry animals, but then they eat and they go into cocoons, and then they become small, green.
This invasion by strange creatures, perhaps from another galaxy or a dimensional warp.
They continue to plague this troubled structure.
Fucking rats, the woman says, breathless with anger. They're everywhere.
The reader may pick the analogy that suits him the best. Go on, pick one.
As the gremlins swing into their song, an angle on the lobby floor spots 2 trash cans with swinging lids.
It seems incredible, but following their rampage of destruction, these creatures are now mounting what appears to be a production number, New York, New York.
When the woman said the word gremlins, it took a second for my brain to map the word as she pronounced it the way the word had lived in my head as a child. We said gremlins in Portuguese, that extra I added like a drop of water to the back of a mogwai, giving rise to an additional syllable. When I realized the keychain was gizmo, I reached for it immediately. How strange to feel at that moment that the little gizmo was more rightly mine than hers.
I'm only interested
Interested
in what
in
is
what
not
is not
mine.
mine.
Brain gremlin.
Fred, what we want is, I think, what everyone wants and what you and your viewers have, civilization.
The drinking gremlins nod in agreement. Pound beer mugs on the bar for emphasis.
The niceties, Fred, the fine points, diplomacy, compassion, standards, manners, tradition. That's what we're reaching toward. Oh, we may stumble along the way, but civilization, yes. The Geneva Convention, chamber music, Susan Sontag, everything your society has worked so hard to accomplish over the centuries. That's what we aspire to. We want to be civilized.
I thought of myself sitting there, my body filled with American proteins, American water, American sugar, the alcohol taking over my brain and liver. I remembered reading that it took 10 years for a human skeleton to be completely replaced through cell renewal. I had American bones now. I thought I was the eater, but America had been eating me the whole time from within.
I looked down and saw I stepped on my gremlin's keychain, fracturing Gizmo's tiny plastic back. Gizmo's head fell off and rolled close to the edge of the shelf, but I caught it right before it dropped and carefully placed it next to its cracked, headless body.
The nude, headless body of a male was discovered shortly after dawn in an alley off Rua dos Cães.
Come here, Sididi. Come here, the head shouted. Capé's head kept rolling closer ever, on the lookout for them. Onward they ran, and when they were too worn out to go on, they climbed the bacupari tree by the river to see if the head might keep going. But the head stopped under the tree and asked for some bacupari. Makanahima shook the branches. The head gathered the fruits off the ground, ate them, and asked for more. The head waited a long time, but seeing how they weren't going to open up, she mulled over what she wanted to be. If she became water, others would drink her. If she became an ant, they'd squish her. If she became a mosquito, they'd zap her. If she became a train, she'd get derailed. If she became a river, they'd put her on the map. She made up her mind. I'll go be the moon.
A man cuts off the head of his cockroach girlfriend while she's sleeping. She staggers upward, attacks, and kills him, and still has a whole week left to live. She walks down the city streets, holding her head under her arm so that she can see where she's going. She writes an article for BuzzFeed about embracing the time she has left, but the truth is, her severed throat is tight with terror.
The fifth story, it is called. It begins like this. Uma canoa, varando a
manhã de norte a sul.
The canoe scudded to a stop at the steep, rocky shore. There was no slip, so he tossed the rope, which he had knotted to a crossbar, and waded with a pierced plum square, just larger than his fist, forward into the foliage.
Manhattan, Manhattan, Manhattan. Manhattan, Manhattan, Manhattan.
The promise of freedom sweetened the air like incense.
Passa por debaixo da Avenida Presidente Vargas, debaixo das bombas, das bandeiras, debaixo das botas, debaixo das rosas, dos jardins, debaixo da lama, debaixo da cama.
Our Miss São Paulo, our brown-skinned, buck-toothed hero with such character, beginning the excerpt from the hallucinated city to hoots and catcalls, while thinking to himself, then as now, we must never let the lies and the tears devour us. We must devour and savor the years.
The bushes shuddered with the alarm of creatures stirred from their lees. Insects rose in a screen before his eyes, vanishing.
Thank you so much. Thank you all. You're all amazing. Oh my gosh.
It's really wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you so much,
Congratulations,
everybody.
Thanks so much for organizing this, and thanks for everyone
Congratulations.
for reading.
Thank you,
Great.
Ananda.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
everyone.
much. This has been really lovely. Thank you, everybody. We can do, if anybody has one question, that's fine. But if nobody has questions, that's totally fine too. And I will just say that all the words, every single word came from one of these works. So most of them came in the link. So most of them came from the people who read here today, with some support from Clarice Lispector, Machado de Assis, Caetano Veloso, Titãs, Kafka. But most of the words were from people here. Very amazing books that I love. So it was really lovely to spend a lot of time with the books. It's very, very hard to not put the whole thing there. Yes. Thank you, everybody.
Can I ask a
Oh,
question?
yes. Yeah.
I just love like hearing about how you think and your creative process. And I wonder if you could say a few words about how this came together for you and how it was different, or how it felt like a change of pace maybe from writing Tropicalia, and like, you know, just how, I'd just love to hear how you came up with this idea, which I love and I'm so honored to have been a part of.
I'm so happy you're all here. I'll tell you because, you know, as I was putting this together, I was like, oh my gosh, why did I do this? But also, I thought about it for a year because we wanted to do it back then, you know, but it just wasn't organized. But it was so good. Thank you. I'll tell you about it in a second, but because I'm going to forget. Can we do a screenshot? Gwen, come back. All right. Is everybody here? Okay. Now, friends who don't want to be in the screenshot, turn your camera off if that's okay. And I'll do a couple of screenshots before I forget. So everybody, let me change my view too. Sorry. I don't know how to do it. Okay. All right, wonderful. Okay, perfect. So thank you so much, Erica, for this question. Well, I was driving around like in 2020. I was going in the middle of nowhere and I was listening to songs with Noah in the car. And especially when the Chitan song, the Bichos one came, because I was like, how can I do something fun for Tropicalia? So as soon as that came in, I was like, oh, I should mix up all this stuff because, you know, Tropicalia is all about that, you know, like the anthropophagia, you know, so I should just have a bunch of this stuff that is in there in the reading. And then immediately, you know, the rat was very quick because there's the rat story there. And there's just so many things. And then I started thinking very specifically about your works, and things really came together, you know, because I just got a little tiny bit of the sort of connections and resonances, but there's so many. So I was basically driving for hours, like for days, thinking, oh, that's so cool, there's this thing. So it gave me a lot of joy for a long time thinking about this. And then like I was so disorganized and things were so chaotic, so I sort of shelved it, as you know, because I asked you a year ago. But I kept thinking about it. So thank you for being a part of it. Good. Thank you all. Wonderful. I really appreciate it, everybody. Thank you so much. And congratulations, Milo, too. This is wonderful.
Oh, thank you so much. So
Have a
lucky to be here.
wonderful night.
Thank you, Ananda. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ananda.
Everybody. Really appreciate y'all being here. Thank you. Have a good night.
Have a good night. Ah.